Hey everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Closing Report for March 23rd, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES right here. Basically, we had a push back into the pivot range, and now price closed right around 28s on the day. For the most part, price continues to hold near overall highs. We haven't had much of a pullback at all, only a stall. We've only seen just minor stalls or very small, modest pullbacks during this recent advance. I would imagine that if price pulls into as low as the 2019 level, that's the previous week's midpoint and the current week's pivot range low, that defense at that area by the bulls could lead to a snap higher. However, we may not see that heading into the end of the week. Obviously, we have one more trading day in the U.S. ahead of the Friday holiday session here in the U.S., so we could see another day of quiet trading range behavior back within the range. And then in the upcoming week, we could be looking at some significant near-term expansion from this tightly coiled range. Overall, the expectation is to continue to look to defend pullbacks for a continuation higher, at least one more move in the 2061 and perhaps as high as 2077s. All right, let's take a look at the intraday time frame. Looking at the intraday chart here, for the most part, price chopped around and trended lower throughout the session. One thing we talked about pre-market was watching 2044s here, and that easily led to further weakness to the downside, eventually culminating with a move into 2025. So a steady continuation into the downside primary target 2028, and now we have to see how price responds. Any early weakness could be defended off of 2019 for a shot back at 5-day VPOC at 2034. Above 2036 opens up a retest of 2044 to 2047. Let's take a look at crude oil. Here's crude oil. One thing we noticed early in the session, we talked about this also before, but this is 41.28, and that's composite VPOC right here. It shifted higher from 40.08, which was previous composite VPOC. And then before that, we had 34.25 down here. And what I kept talking about during this uptrend was I said, watch composite VPOC now, because whenever that goes offered, it could be an early indication that value is being rejected at these price levels, which would lead to a downward price discovery phase, either into previous value, 34.25, or to create new value. So right now, early on, what we saw this morning was price going offered off the 41.28 level. And basically that defense off that level, which coupled with the previous week's close of 41.14, what that did was that tell us that we could be looking at further weakness to the downside to retest 40.08. We talked about this hole in the profile, which means we could see another bounce back up and fill in this profile a little bit more, so that we get a balanced range here, and from there we could look at the next major move. Overall, there's a double distribution building out right here. So this LVN at 37.65 is still a big time LVN to defend as bulls for rotations back into 42.50. So right now what could be happening is this distribution needs more development. There's the LVN. You found an edge down here. You found a high up here. We could see some more action like this build out. But overall, this is the first implication that we could see further weakness ahead, given that this thing has been offered. So any retest of this area offers an opportunity for bears to defend for a continuation into 37.65. So there's a couple of ideas here as we head into the upcoming session with regards to crude oil in a higher time frame. Here's a look at the lower time frames. This was a steady downtrending market throughout the session. We easily reached our downside primary target on the day. That level right there. And then we continued lower and reached the 100% target on the session, eventually reaching the 50% expansion from the key range, 39.72. So a solid, steady sell-off throughout the session. And again, it kind of all began with price being offered off the composite VPOC at 41.38. Now overall, you have to watch 39.72 here. Any bounce off that zone could push price right back to this ETH VWAP or perhaps into the previous sessions. Midpoint, that could provide an additional area for bears to defend. But right now, we'll see how this continues to play out. Now, if we look at gold, here gold took a big time tumble to the downside. We were talking about how 72s had been rejected this entire time. And one thing about that was that when we were looking at this before, the previous highs here, that was the previous highs from the previous week, but that was when price came into that level and couldn't see any expansion. So beyond that level, price tried and tried and tried and tried, and each time was rejected. When it was rejected on this session here, we talked about defending here for a continuation here. Well, when price bounced up again and redefended the zone, we said look for it to come right back out, down again to this zone, and it did. Even as early as yesterday, we were talking about this pullback could open up a continuation here. And so you've seen this thing play out time and time again. And now failing to hold above the midpoint of the range at 1227.70, that's important. You have to watch out for that, because a retest back up into this zone could offer a short-term defense for a continuation back into the bottom of the actual key range, 1191.90. So failing to hold above the top of this range opens up a move back to the midpoint. We've done that twice now and closed below the midpoint. So a continuation back across the range could be seen. Overall, short-term weakness should be seen unless price can pop back above 1227s and establish acceptance back above that area. Looking at the NQ, not really much to report on the NQ. It's been a very stale market, very quiet trading range behavior for the most part, despite highs, new highs. We have kind of higher lows, higher highs. So we kind of have a channel going like this right now. I've just mentioned the 43.55 key level over and over. That's the key level to watch. As long as price remains above that zone, we will likely see further upside price discovery, but any failure to hold that area will be very important and would open up a return back toward recent support between 41.88 and 4200. So if you look at the intraday time frame of the NQ, overall you can see how price rallied into 44.40. One thing we talked about pre-market was how this rejection at the previous high here was very concerning short term and could lead to a move back toward 5-day VPOC and the previous session's low. You can see how price dropped right into 5-day VPOC, bounced into value, and offered and completed the move into the previous session's low. So a big time move. Also, price dropped into the midpoint of the key range. This is the 50% expansion. This is the edge of the range, and this is the midpoint of the range. So boom, boom, drop, boom, boom, drop down to here. You can also see how clean VWAP was today and how it was offered on every test throughout the session, which was solid. So again, important how this played out. It went according to our idea, and now we have to watch the bottom of the range here. This is a point in the profile where we could see price quietly move back toward the top of value above 44.15. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the final trading day of the week, Thursday.